Okay, we are recording. Tim, how are you today?
Hello, sir. I'm very well, thank you. How
That
are
was a
you?
really energetic hello, sir. Like we ain't been bunnying away for the last 20 minutes
I
anyway.
know, I know you've got a kind of, show business, isn't
Of course it is, mate. Yeah. Give a little peek behind the curtain, then we've been chatting for 20 minutes. But
it?
well, look, it's lovely to have you on. And are you currently in your studio?
Yeah, so I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I actually live in here. I
Hmm.
I got the building it was about 15 years ago. And we had a rehearsal room around the corner that was in a Cromwell Tools it was called, and it was sort of like a tool sourcing, they did manufacturing as well. But anyway, we had a room there and we sort of got lost in the system. We didn't pay any rent. Nobody really noticed for ages. And then we had some mates coming down and they were starting to use it in the evenings. And I sort of thought, oh, this is quite good. If we could get somewhere a bit bigger, we could start our own sort of little commune kind of thing. And so I started having a nose about and eventually found this place and got it for the same price as my two up, two down it was at the time. My old man helped me borrow the money. And then yeah, slowly started sort of do a room because I didn't have a bank wouldn't lend me anything, build a room and then get my mates in there and then the next, save up a bit and then build the next one, get someone else in. And basically that's what I've been doing really on and off for like the last 15 years and the fucking thing's still not finished. So it's like
Work in progress, mate.
yeah, and then I sort of always wanted to live down here. Technically you can do it, but I mean you're not really supposed to. I think you sort of got a bit of a leeway of working late through the night and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so the time came about in my life where I was spending a lot of time in London, working in the film industry, and it sort of didn't make sense to have a house up here as well. So I sort of took over a room when a band moved out, and then slowly I've been, adding bits and extending it and stuff. So yeah, it's great fun because a lot of people down here, they've been down here a really long time. I was
Yeah.
mentioning to you about, Ross Orton and there's a few other bands and stuff. And they're all like my old mates, really. So it's
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, nice to step outside and bump into your mates. And usually I get distracted and it's like fucking 2 hours has gone by and I'm supposed to be fixing something. So yeah, it's great. It's great. Love it down here, man.
Tim, let's kick off your playlist. And for track one, I'm going to ask you to tell me the song that you regard as having the greatest ever intro, please.
Right. Well, I'm not sure if it's the greatest ever intro,
Hmm.
but for me, there was two. So when I was
You've been
growing
a
up,
bit, you've been a bit greedy here, haven't you?
I know, I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry. It's like I've got this sort of like I've got this weird split personality thing going on, so I'm going to nick two. But
Okay.
yeah, for me, my old man had Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd album, and we used to go on these really, really long drives down to my uncle's in France. And his missus was French, and they had a place down there. So it was the only time really. We used to go Cornwall a bit as well. That would be another story later. But it was one of those things where I don't know whether you had it or not, but you got the long car drive, and I think he had that, and he had ELO. I can't remember which album that was, and there was another one as well. I can't remember. Oh, Dire Straits,
Hmm.
Money for Nothing, and it would just be those three songs for like days. Sorry, those
Yeah.
five for like days. So you sort of get these tunes stuck in your head, and yeah. So I mean, the start of Money, by Pink Floyd is. It was just mad to me. I think at that age, it's like what's going on? Like it's not even barely music. Like the first part of it, and you got the cash register going
Mm.
and all of that sort of. I mean, it was mad for me to think that could be, that could be music. And then the other part of it was, I think it was the first time I heard a swear word in a song, and I did. I was a bit worried before I come on, but I listened to quite a few shows before, and it doesn't seem to be an issue because I've got a terrible potty mouth on
Oh,
me.
you're good,
So,
mate.
so to me as a kid, it was like, oh my God, he's fucking swearing. And I remember going to my cousins, being like, my dad's got this song, and I was listening to it, and there's a swear word in it. It was like that was a really big deal for me. I
Yeah.
just thought I was really breaking the boundaries. And then actually my so on my other side of my family, my great granddad on my grand side of the family came over in the 1930s to Liverpool from Ghana. So my gran was mixed race, but weirdly, the kids all ended up being white. So I sort of had these two sort of sides really to, I think, to my personality at that time where, I played a lot of basketball and I was quite athletic, and I had a lot of mates who were into, a bit later on, but were into hip hop and all that side. And so the other tune for me was Michael Jackson at the time. Like I was really really into Michael Jackson. So I sort of always had these two parallels to my life, which I think we'll talk about in some of the other questions. But yeah, so beat it. I think from Michael Jackson when I was a kid. I think we had it on. My dad had a jukebox that he brought back from a job he was doing in Holland, and I think that was in the jukebox as a single. And I mean, mate, those just the simplest, straightest drum beat like on earth. And then when that bass just rocks in, and then the synth part, it still sends tingles up my spine, man. Which not probably not a lot of people would have guessed, that I'd have been a Michael Jackson fan, but it's only something I've really sort of remembered in the last sort of 10 years or so. It's weird, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because I think I was born in 1981, which I'm not sure when that came out, that album, but I would have only been really young, I think, when I first heard that. Maybe even like five or something. I don't know.
Mm. I think Thriller come out in like maybe it was 82 or 83. I think 82.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say not long after I was born,
Yeah.
really. So it probably stuck around a little bit. But I remember our first house in Sandhurst, where we lived in Sandhurst, and I think that was. I remember listening to that when I was really trying to break dance with some weird gloves on that I'd got, like some BMX gloves or something, and like Michael Jackson going, like really good memories, man, of that time. So yeah, those are those two for me, really.
And it's interesting you're sitting in the studio where music's produced and you reference three albums, whether that be Money for Nothing, Dark Side, or Thriller, three of the biggest selling albums of all time. Uh,
I
and
didn't know that.
and
Really?
three absolute masters of production on all three of those
Oh
records.
yeah, bro.
Like sonically, you
Oh, bro,
know,
100%.
you
Yeah,
know,
I think like recently we just so I was working in the film industry for last 8 years. I managed to get a job for a mate who was helping us make music videos, and I actually got into special effects, which was a lot of fun. It was like basically blowing shit up. So not all the time,
yeah,
sometimes whenever you see in a film, if you see someone fill in the bath, do you know what I mean, or it's raining. It's like that's the special effects department. They have to make that happen. So a lot of the time, you sort of like over glorified plumbers. But when you get on an action film, it's quite a lot of fun because you're sort of like flipping cars
mm,
around and setting fire to things and blowing all the stupid stuff that were doing with little models when you were a kid. You know what I mean?
yeah.
You kind of got to do it for real. So yeah, when I can't even remember why I was talking about that now. But while I was on that job, that's it. I saved up all the money I possibly could because I kind of had this dream of building like an industry standard studio. And the kind of main, most popular console, even still today, a lot of modern music is still mixed and produced on these consoles, and it's the SSL G series. And I managed to get hold of one, which was made in 1988. It was used in EMI studios in Japan. Yeah, so
Wow.
I managed to get hold of all the really smart. My mate Pete, who installed one actually at Abbey Road, the same console, I managed to get in touch with him and he come and help us put it in and all of that. But through that, I sort of really started to learn about exactly what you just said, the production value of the music at that time. And I think Michael Jackson had a custom model of one of those built, and it was the biggest one they ever built. It was like 125 channels or something, like fucking as long as your house.
Yeah.
And then, I recently got obsessed with exactly what you just said, is looking at Quincy Jones, looking at his production style, looking at the engineer, Bruce Sweetie, and then they're just sitting there going through take after take, and just the quality of that album, of Thriller, and also I guess the other ones around that time. It's like that moment where I think, and also going into the kind of early 90s moment as well. It's like, man, that just the sonic value of what's coming through your speakers there is ridiculous. And it inspired people like Dr. Dre, and that's the console that he uses as well. And you can hear that. I think the Chronics, the 2001 album that he did, I think that's regarded as one of the highest quality recordings as well of all
Yeah.
time. And you can just hear Quincy Jones all over that record,
Yeah.
like production. It's so, yeah, big fan of production, man. Big fan of trying to get things right.
If you get a chance, if you've not heard it already, there's like it was a bonus CD that I had of Off the Wall, and it's basically Quincy Jones and Michael sitting at the desk, and they're laying down. You can hear them breaking down. Don't stop till you get enough,
Yeah.
and now they're layering it, and all the little like tinkling noises, like that. Basically, it's the sort of percussive sound that just carries that whole record. Is Janet Jackson, who's about 6, playing
No
little
way.
bottles, and he's
No
talking to
way.
Janet, getting her to play these bottles, and like
Oh my days.
it's
That's sick.
it's fucking crazy. And if you get a
Wow.
chance hearing,
Oh,
and
you'll have
and
to send me the
I
info.
will, man.
That I would love that, mate.
And it's not just Quincy Jones. You hear that Jackson was a clever man. Like when
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
when he's in that studio, like he was something ridiculously talented as well. But
yeah.
all right, well, let's stay in those formative years, Tim, and tell me, please, for track 2, the first song you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please.
Yeah, so now we sort of move over to the other side from the polished, beautiful, high production value sort of style of music into this whole other world. Where I think I'll look back, I'll try to work it out. I think I was about 9 years old, and my cousin, I can't remember, he's 4 or 6 years older than me, and his dad out of the family, so my man's brother, he was really into his tunes, and he had a lot of vinyl, a lot of records, a lot of Beatles, a lot of Zeppelin, everything from the 60s onwards right up until this sort of time. And I think he'd been quite inspired by all that. And I still need to ask him how he done this, but somehow he got a subscription to this magazine, which was in the States. I think it was in the States. And it was basically each release of the magazine, it would come with a free 7-inch single. And the 7-inch would be like an indie. I think it was like an indie release, or it was just whatever they felt was the right thing at the time. And so through that, I got the first thing that I remember hearing was a bootleg tape, and I don't know how he got that. I think the magazine might have come later. I don't know, but the first thing I heard was "School" by Nirvana, and it was off of Bleach. It was off the Bleach album, which I don't know when that got released in the UK, but he definitely had it before it was released. And so nobody knew who Nirvana was. And I just remember we had the other place we used to go on holiday was down to my uncle's timeshare he had in Cornwall, and we'd go down there for holidays sometimes. And I just remember my cousin put this tape on, and he played that song, and I just got on the bed and we were just jumping around, just like to this. No, who's that? He's like screaming,
Yeah.
and I'm saying, my cousin, what's Recess? What's he talking about? I was like. So he's explaining to me, all the lyrics and stuff. And like, that was, to me, that was just like, this is me. Like, this is a release, like this sort of feeling of, yeah, I just want to fucking let go. I just want to, and that, I think that was the beginning of my sort of, my sort of love for, I guess a punk attitude. You know, it was delivered in the style of grunge, but it was still just this sort of angst and this release that was really, really inspiring for me. And I think that was probably the moment. You know, I think I'd played around with the idea of being a singer and stuff like that. I was always singing and looking in the mirror and trying to, like, you know, mouth to the, you know, do a music video in a mirror and all that kind of stuff. But when Nirvana came along in my life, it was like, this is what I want to do. And then after that, my cousin would just, every time I'd see him, he'd be like, check this out, Rage Against the Machine's first single, Red Hot Chili Peppers' first single. And it was just that time, Beastie Boys. And I just remember him playing me every time I go around. He got this magazine, he got a new single, and it was just like, and then after he played me that stuff, you know, a few months later, all my mates would be like, oh, look, check this band out. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I heard them ages ago. And it was, yeah, it was a really fun time, man. It was an amazing time. Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous to sort of quantify the level of impact and influence that Nirvana had on generation after generation of you know, angry kids, lost kids, you know, kids that just had fire in their belly and like and just wanted it soundtracked. And you could say the same for Rage. Do you know what I mean? I don't think on a scale as much as Nirvana, but yeah, it was something pretty magical. I'd love to say that I'd heard Bleach before Nevermind, and but it was retrospective for me. It was like, I mean, I'm 51, so I was I was 18 when Nevermind dropped. I caught it at the right
Oh,
time, man. It was like I heard it in clubs. I was, you know, and
wow.
I was playing it in my clubs, and like, and so it was the best. And then like hearing this for me, like Nevermind, and you know, we was talking about when Butch come on the show before we press record. It was like I know that Kurt wasn't massively into that production of Nevermind. I think he preferred the who produced Bleach? What's his name?
Oh, I can't
Uh,
remember.
didn't he die? Like, died last year, didn't he? Done. Oh God. Anyway,
Yeah,
uh, because I think he thought it was too shiny, and
that's what I heard. Yeah.
but I think Nevermind is the best pop album ever made. I think there's not one track on there that isn't so infectious. And back when you know I was DJing in the early '90s, like in all these sort of alternative clubs, you could put Nevermind on, and you could put any track on, and like how many albums can you do that in a club? Where like you've got obviously you got the singles that was Teen Spirit, Come As You Are, and Lithium, which you know if you want to take the roof off a club, drop any of them.
Yeah.
But that's without fucking Stay Away, Drain You, fucking
Yeah.
Territorial Pissings.
Yeah.
Like it was like
Breed.
Breed, any of it. It's just
Yeah.
fucking amazing.
Yeah, yeah, incredible. I think I only came to the realization maybe in the last sort of 5 years or so, like that is that exactly what you just said. It's a pop record, and if you strip it back and you literally just sing it to yourself. I mean, who was that geezer? Was it Mike Flowers? Do you remember that? Was it Mike
Yeah.
Flowers? I remember that, right? You know
What
what I mean? Like
that
it
done
was,
Wonderwall?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Didn't he do Teen Spirit as well? Am I making
Probably.
that up? I might
No,
be making that up.
Mike Flowers was knocking out all sorts of lounge room style covers of
Yeah,
everything
I
in.
think
Yeah.
you did a Nirvana one, but you know, you did when you sing it to yourself, just you know, forget about all the guitars and stuff. It's just like you can't even believe how actually pop that is, and how I don't know. I really notice all the sort of like there's a '60s pop element to it for me. Do you know what I mean? Like old school pop
Mm.
that I think he managed to just sneak in there, and I don't know if that must have been the first time. I don't know if anybody else has done that before, but to me, that feels like first time someone really did something like that was super clever. Like to take those kind of influences, do you know what I mean? And then build this like massive noise around it. So you're
Yeah.
almost like covering it up and then to sort of pretend that it was all by accident. Like, come on. Like you knew what you were doing. You knew
Yeah.
what you were doing. But yeah, I heard that too about the production style because I think well, the way that they recorded it was pretty raucous. I think they were all quite
Mm.
happy with the board mixes. So I don't know if I read that or listened to it somewhere. And then I think it was when it went off to get mixed. I think the label was like, "Now come on, we need to like polish this up a bit." I even heard that I can't remember the guy's name now who mixed it, but I think he sort of denies it a little bit. But I think they use drum samples like on the kick and snare, and I think they might have created a bit of a reverb as well, because the room sound was really quite gnarly. I mean, that the studio that I built here, I based it off of Sound City, took as much influence from that as I could, because to me that studio is just like, you know, Rumors came out of there, the Rage Against the Machine, when they heard Nirvana, when they heard Nevermind, they were like, yeah, we want to fucking record wherever they did that. And then after that, later, I think Slipknot were in there, and there's been all sorts through there over the years because of that little moment. I think obviously back in the day as well with Fleetwood Mac and stuff, but I think there was a real moment in the 90s where that sound to me is just like, you know, and it's not the same studio, but you can hear it as well, even though it's a completely different style. I feel like Blood Sugar Sex Magic by the Chili Peppers. There was something going on then where the production was just sort of like, it was raw enough for you to be like, oh yeah, I'm into this. But it was also, it had this sort of like, exactly like you said, like slight polished edge to it. So when you play it in the car, like it feels fat, and it's not hurting your ears too much, and you can fucking turn it up really loud. And that for me was like, you know, when we're doing recordings here now, that's my thing. You know what I mean? It's like that sort of time for, particularly I think for rock music, was that's sort of my favorite era. Really, probably helps as well as when I was a kid too. You know what I mean? So.
It's so weird you say that. It's I remember like in the sort of mid-90s, and we had a little record deal, and we was sort of messing around with music, and we recorded like our first single, and I remember thinking, fucking hell, man, I've just recorded OK Computer. I've just nailed this. Like, you know, this like, no, that bravado. The first time you're ever in a studio and you just think like, fucking, I've just rewrote the book here, mate. Like, people are going to be talking about me for years. And the fella
Yes, I know
at the
that.
desk went, yeah, sounds good. He said, let's kind of sort of balance it out. And he put on Rumors. And he might as well have just fucking pulled the valve out of everyone in the band, because we just deflated back into our seats of like, oh, fuck, man. We've just recorded a really shit demo, haven't we? That's all we've done.
Straight back to reality.
It really was.
Bit unfair, though.
I had a couple of seconds where I thought, you know, yeah, fucking hell. I reckon I'll meet Michael Stipe soon. Like, he's going to be a big fan of this.
It's a bit unfair though, mate. I mean, in terms of fucking quality of record, like that album sounds fucking awesome. I think.
Yeah.
Hearing it now, it's funny actually. I was listening to the Gia Ford. You had her on. I was listening to that because she's a Sheffield. Obviously, I'm not a Sheffielder, but I've been long enough to be one now. And I could the first tune, I think it's called Poolside, and I could really hear a bit of the old Fleetwood Mac on inspiration on there, and it was really nice. It was subtle, just moment. And then I didn't know much, you know, about her. So then before the podcast, then I was reading a bit afterwards, and it went down on there and said about that. But I mean, that album's, I think, yeah, the sonics of that album's great, and I feel like that's sort of the beginning of that. You know, it's that kind of tight drum sound, not a lot of reverb on it. You know, like it's almost those moments when you listen to Bruce Swedian, and he sort of said, you know, even when like stereo came into play, there's a story I think he talks about, and I can't remember when that was, late 60s, mid 60s or something. And he said they started to realize that they could sort of make an artificial version of what, you know, the band sounded like. Previously to that, they're just capturing it exactly as it was. But now we can put these close microphones on this kick drum and this snare drum, and we can make it really dry, and we can put some bass in that, and we can put that right forward in the mix. And that, you know, they were inventing that at that time. And that's really mad when you think now, when we listen to music, that's not what it sounds like, is it? Like you said, your demo, you know what I mean? Like, you're there playing away. And if you record it in that old sort of style, you know, it's going to come through. It's a bit raucous. It's a bit, you know, it's a bit harsh and all that. And then they get to the point where they're kind of almost faking it. You know, you're panning guitars off to the left and the right, nice and wide, so you can hear all of the, you know, the fat bass and the kick and snare sort of like down the middle of it. I think that must have been mad time, you know, to be able to sort of be a part of that. And now that's how we do it, and that's how
Yeah.
we've done it since that time. And even says on that, like the record labels wouldn't pay for it to be in stereo. They're like, no, this isn't going to take off. Like, just leave it in mono. So I think what they done is they clubbed together, bought there's obviously different tape to do stereo because you need two channels, and they were like, oh, let's just mix it in stereo as well anyway. And then apparently years later they come back to these engineers and they said, oh, we want to do this in stereo. I said, oh, that's funny. We already fucking did it in stereo anyway. Do you want to buy it off us? And they managed
Oh,
to ship
really?
money. Yeah. Fucking brilliant. It's good, that story. It's somewhere on YouTube, I think.
Oh,
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
Well, look, let's get on to your next track, Tim, and tell me, please, the song that reminds you of your time at school.
Right. So yeah, we're moving straight on. For me, it's Rage Against the Machine, Killing in the Name of. And again, so we've gone from, what is it, like one swear word in Money or something, and then I don't know if
Yeah,
there's any swear words in Nirvana, but then obviously, this song came out and I was just could not understand how you were allowed to use words like that, in a song, especially that many times. So when my cousin played me that, I was just like, oh my God, this is my fucking favorite band of all time. And probably still is. I mean, it's difficult to say in it that you got one. But yeah, when that track came out, I was like, I don't give a fuck what anyone says. I don't care what anyone thinks of me. It really gave me a lot of confidence, I think, as a sort of young teenager. And I remember basically, that was sort of like almost like my protection jacket, I think, like going around school and stuff. And whenever there was any drama, you just sort of felt a little bit more like you were ready for it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like you got the soundtrack behind you to feel like, nah, listen, this is me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
because at that time the kind of the rave and the clubbing scene was also picking up, and like ecstasy tablets and fuck. So it was like you were either a raver or you're a grunger, and that was the thing in my school. And there weren't as many grungers as there were
mm,
ravers. So there was a little bit of conflict here and there, and you sort of had to really believe in what it is that you were doing. Do you know what I mean? You had to be quite strong in character to not join the ravers and to be like, no, I don't. And my best mate, he went down the rave route, and I was like, nah, brother, I'm fucking, this is me. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And then later on, he actually came back to
yeah,
our
yeah,
sort of like grunge scene. But yeah, it was probably, I think it might have been the second band I was in at school. And I can't remember who else was talking about it. I was listening to one of your other podcasts. I'm really annoyed. I can't remember who it was now, but I think it might have been Dave from the Zootons. But that moment at lunchtime and after school when you get in the music room, do you know what I mean? And you can go and use the music room. And so I'd been doing that, and I'd done one band, I think, and we'd done the geezer, my mate Chris. He was really into Pearl Jam at that time, so it's a lot of Pearl Jam, and I liked Pearl Jam, but it wasn't. I needed it a little bit. It needs to be a little bit harder for me at that time, and so then I went off and started this other band with a couple of my mates, and literally the first thing I wanted to do was learn that song. So we got to the point where we could do "Killing the Name of." They were quite good, but get bass and guitar, and of course I knew every word. And we just fucking did that song over and over and over. And then I was like, oh, yeah, do you want to try another Rage Against the Machine song? And after a few months, they were like, listen, Tim, we don't really want to be in this band anymore because all you want to do is fucking Rage Against the Machine. So yeah, that's my quite strong memory of screaming that song in the music room at lunchtime. Is really, really good memories, man.
it's such an incredible record, and I got quite an interesting sort of relationship with it as well. It was I used to go when I was really young. Like I used to go to this venue in London called the Gas Club, and they had a warm up DJ, and his name was Errol Olken,
Oh yeah.
uh, and that has obviously gone on to become a super producer. And but Errol was the warm up DJ back then before he'd started his big club night trash and all of that, like, years later. And he always played interesting records. And I was DJing in my club in Essex, and I thought I had my finger on the pulse a bit as well. And I went there and he was playing all this stuff. And I weren't being that kind of indie wanker of like, yeah, I know this, yeah, I know this. But he dropped Killing in the Name and I'd never heard it. And it pained me to walk up to the DJ booth and say, what's this? And he was so smug telling me. And like, but I just thought, I need to know what this is. Man, it feels like someone's just dropped a fucking house on me. Like, well, this is insane, this record. And like, and so I remember taking it back to like buying it, like importing it in, taking it back to my club, playing it in my club. And I mean, how many times do you play a record for the first time to people that have never heard it and people respond massively, instantly? That's not easy. And
Yeah.
that record done it. And to this day, if I still play that in my club, it gets played every week. Like the generation after generation after generation still lose their shit to it. And one of my regulars was a fella called John Mortar. And John Mortar, I don't know how many years ago it was, 12, 13 years ago, was was a big fan of Rage and he used to always come and ask for it in the club. And then he started up a MySpace, or no, a Facebook page about getting it to the Christmas #1.
Was
And
that no way? That was him.
yeah, and that was John. Like, he literally lives about 3 rows up from me, and
That's crazy,
and
man.
he set up the campaign to get them to beat the X Factor for Christmas #1, which led them to coming over and play Finsbury Park, and
That's so
yeah,
cool.
like
That's so cool. The mad thing was like all this music that we're talking about now, and you sort of saying, "Oh, yeah, I was here and in this club and seeing this band and stuff." I was too young. Like I
yeah.
was way too young, and when I first got into it, obviously it was a little bit earlier than when it all fucking broke. So I never got to see Nirvana. My cousin went to see him, but he was 16. I think I was still 10. So there was no way I was going to be able to get to go. And but then when that happened, when your mate did that, well, tell him thank you very much from me, because all my fucking Christmases came at once. They come over to I think it must have been, I don't know if it was a bit later, they did Reading and Leeds. I
That's
can't
right.
remember what year was that, 2008, not
Yeah.
entirely sure. And luckily I was a little bit like Frank said in his one, like I'd never really pulled in any favors, you know what I mean, but we had a quite a big booking agent at the time, a guy called Jeff Craft. And I was like, Jeff, listen, I've never asked for anything before, but please, mate, can you get me in to see that band? And I'd done exactly the fucking same thing as Frank. Literally, I was like, right, boys, I wore steel toe cap boots because I knew what it was going to be like. So I'll get all prepped. And we got in, got to the back of the crowd. I said, right, boys, look after the car keys. I'm fucking off. I don't know if I'll come back. And I
Like you're
went
going to war.
I was going fucking was. I was going to battle, mate. So I went like right down the front, as close as I could get, and it fucking booted off. I can't remember what the first song was, but literally, you know what it's like when the mosh really gets going with that many people. There'd just be like 100 people would just collapse, right? And you'd be trying to help each other up and like try not to get caught in the collapse, like. So that was it, just trying to stay alive, going off, and then it all stopped. Everything just stopped. And the band were like looking at each other, looking around, like, and I'm thinking, what the fuck, what's going on here? And then basically we managed to see there was like really young girls who just obviously didn't know who they were and thought, oh, I'll go to the front for this next band. And they were getting crushed big time. So I think somebody somewhere had said, right, we better stop. So we were literally just pulling these girls out of the crowd, lifting them up, and just so that they could crowd surf to the front and get safe. And then eventually then they started the gig again. But I don't think they really stopped. I don't think Rage Against the Machine really tend to do that. So they were all just sort of looking a bit confused for about 3 minutes. Then it kicked back in and it just went double nuts. And I was like, I was just trying to stay alive. And then right at the end, Killing the Name comes on, and I was like, right, this is definitely last song, so I'm going. So I climbed over the top and crowd surfing. I got crowd surfed right to the front. I dropped over the barrier into the bit between the stage and the band, and Zach De La Rocha was like spitting distance away from me, like he was right there. And it just is the end, the fists in the air, and it's like the whole crowd is just chanting, at the end of that song. And the security team was so fucking blown away by what was going on. all of which are American dreams. You know what I mean? Like fucking 100,000 people or something, all saying that together. They were so distracted by what was going on. I was literally just stood there with my hand up. Nobody was taking me away, like right at the front of the stage. And then eventually it finished, and I just got this really gentle hand on the shoulder that just led me away. And I was like, I'm never going to another gig ever again. Like that's it.
Completed it.
Like you can't. How can you top that? Like it was incredible, mate. It was incredible, but not as good as Frank's story. Very jealous. Bastard.
All right. I'm going to ask you to tell me about the first record you remember buying from a record shop, please, Tim.
Right, this one is just we're gonna spoil it now, mate. We're gonna absolutely spoil it. Yeah, so my first record, I'm pretty sure it was the Vanilla Ice album. I'm torn because I think there might have been a Kylie Minogue number in there somewhere as well. But I think I must have been, I'm not sure how old I was. I think again, I must have been around 8 years old or something like that. So that's my defense. But I think on the other hand as well, at that time, you probably know better than me. You do know better than me. But it didn't seem to be a lot of like sort of the hip hop, that we know floating about. Like I was from an 8 year old's perspective anyway, like, on radio and stuff like that. And so I think this was the first time, I think it might have been the first time I'd really heard like rap music, sort of
Yeah.
as we know it. And this is going back to the sort of Michael Jackson phase and way before, probably just before my cousin playing me all of that stuff. And I just remember thinking, what's going on here, And then I think later on in my life, obviously the Rage Against the Machine was coming through, and then there was all this other sort of other side, that I'd said that I was sort of inspired by, and the Ice Cubes were coming along, and then obviously we talked about Dr. Dre and all that kind of thing. So although it's a little bit embarrassing that it was the one, it kind of makes sense to me now that it was sort of like what the way that music was being delivered. I think sort of must have struck a chord with me. And then the more I heard it, as later time gone on, and then obviously Rage Against the Machine combining those two things, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers doing that quite a lot as well was that was where I was really excited, because it was like my two favorite sort of styles of music like coming together in one. So yeah, that was me, Vanilla Ice. I can't, apart from that single, I can't even remember what else was on, but I remember it being a tape. I remember it being a cassette tape. So it was before I'd got into CDs and stuff as well.
Well, he was like a really respected rapper in his early days, and he was doing all the rap battles and stuff, and he was like, everyone was like, this guy's the man. And then
Really?
basically he signed the major label deal and made the kind of went down a sort of more sort of commercial pop route, which I think at that time was sort of frowned upon. And then obviously Ice Ice Baby become a global smash. And
Yeah.
then, all of a sudden he was doing all the showbiz stuff. And I think the sort of the hip hop, crowd turned their back on him and said he was a sellout and stuff like that. And I kind of got sort of bundled in next to like MC Hammer and stuff like that. And it
Yeah,
was
that's
and
it.
it kind of discredited it. And I mean, I still think Ice Ice Baby is a fantastic single. I think
Oh, right, more right than I'm saying.
that that use of the sample, I think, is fucking great. And but yeah, and it's and it's weird because I think artists like that. Well, I mean, up until then, I guess the biggest selling rap record would have been "License to Ill" by the Beastie Boys, and
Was
and
it?
and and then I think the biggest selling rap album would have been that one that you owned by Vanilla Ice. I don't know what it was called,
Right,
but
right.
that would have been probably the one of the other biggest selling rap albums. and obviously in and around them, Public Enemy were doing their thing, and
That's
I
it.
guess it
Yeah.
was the early days of NWA, and there was
Mm.
all your Big Daddy Kane's and stuff like that. But as you say, that wasn't getting commercial radio play. That wasn't going to be on Top of the Pops. That wasn't going to be on Going Live on a Saturday morning. You're not going to have Easy E just
That's
strolling
it.
into Going Live, just telling them
Yeah.
how it
Yeah.
is. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? But whereas Vanilla Ice will play by the rules, and I guess
Yes.
maybe that's why.
And he's
Uh,
white. And he
and
was white.
like, yeah, I know, and what
Yeah.
exactly that, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, that probably was responsible for so much more radio play than a lot of the black artists that were making much better hip hop.
Exactly that, dude. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you said that. That makes me feel a little bit better because I was kind of thinking about it and I was actually chatting to my partner and I was like, I wonder if that was one of the earliest sort of mainstream,
Mm.
versions of what hip hop, later become. And I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? That's cool. I didn't realize that. So he was a bit of an Eminem, like in the
Yeah,
beginning sort of
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
That's
He
really
he he was really respected, and then I think everyone said he was a big sellout, and he ended up dating Madonna, and he become a
know that.
superstar, and Madonna at the height of her pomp as well. So yeah,
I,
it
I
all
remember someone telling a story about him being dangled out of a hotel window or something like that. Did you ever hear that? I don't know if that was true.
no,
I don't know if it was like I don't know if it was like some death row like Suge Knight or some sort of thing like that to try and get him off of the get him off of the popularity chart or something. I might have made that up. I don't know if that was a story from back in the day, but him
yeah,
getting threatened by some serious gangsters for I guess stealing the radio
yeah,
time,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
popularity of hip
But
hop or whatever it is. Understandable, really.
But I think these commercial artists and like Vanilla Ice, and I think they become as you sort of lent on as well, they become like a gateway into that music,
Yeah.
and it's really weird. Like a lot of people sort of laugh about and just discredit bands like Busted, but for me, I
Mm,
think bands like Busted open the door to
I
to
agree.
young kids to pick up guitars and go, "Who's Blink 182? Oh right, they sound a
Yeah,
bit like that." And then it's the gateway in, isn't it? And I think
I agree. I
it's
agree
really
with that.
good that artists like
100%.
that do exist.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think when I was a young man, it was just like, if it wasn't, hurting your ears or offensive or, it didn't have this punk ethic, around the time when we were first sort of starting Bromheads, I was getting into all sort of like bands like Scratch Acid and all these really fucking mad, like all the Steve Albini's stuff. I forgot what his bands are called now, but
Big
anyway,
Black.
yeah, Big Black. Yeah, like this really aggressive, harsh kind of sounding.
Did Albini produce Bleach?
No, I don't think so. I
No.
don't think so. I thought Bleach was like a bunch of dodgy demos they'd done in a few different places. But man, no,
Right.
it wasn't, was it? No, it wasn't. You're right. It did get produced. It had because they had two different drummers, didn't they? The drummer that was the Nirvana drummer was
Yeah.
quite cutting the mustard. So they got Chad, is it Chad Grover
Channing.
in
Was
from
it Chad
Melvin?
Channing? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, in from the Melvins, whichever
Hmm.
yeah, maybe it was Chad Channing and the Melvins drum. You can really hear that. And I remember seeing stuff with Kurt Cobain saying, "Oh, he's like oh no, it's Dale Grover. That's it,
Yeah.
Grover. That was the drummer." And I remember Kurt Cobain saying that Grohl was like a mini Dale, and that's why he liked him. You can really hear that. I think on
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
when Dale Grover's playing, you can hear that sort of it's coming, like you
Yeah.
can hear the gateway almost into Nevermind.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, interesting stuff.
Well, look, I've mentioned playing records in my club. I want to know what was being played in your club. Tell me the track that soundtrack your year's clubbing, please, Tim.
Oh yeah. So I was a bit like some of the others on the show. I didn't do a lot of clubbing, but we did have club in Camberley that we used to go to. And oh, my mate's gonna kill me now because I can't even remember what it was called. But we'd go there and it'd be all the sort of music we've been talking about. But I remember there was a time, mate of mine from school, and it was sort of like when the whole garage, the UK garage scene was getting fired up and I was getting into drum and bass as well a bit at that time, sort of like Ronnie Size and Goldie and all
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. And but this mate of ours, Henry, he used to stay up really late night and he'd record off the radio like all the latest sort of hits from the club scene, and he'd hand those tapes around at school. And I remember when I just passed, I think it was when I just passed my driving test, and he chucked one of these tapes around, And it wasn't strictly my sort of scene. Like I said, I was the grunge and all that, but this time's passed a bit now. I'm in I think I'm doing A levels and stuff at the time, so I was kind of, my mind was more open to things like drum and bass, and I was listening to a lot more hip hop at this time now as well. And yeah, it was Stardust. The music sounds better with you. And I remember just having that on in the car, and it's like all the memories attached. So it's not even so much attached to clubbing, but they were playing it in the club all the time. And if I did occasionally go out with a few of my basketball mates, sometimes we go to it was this club, I think, I can't even remember where it was now, over Crowthorne sort of way. And I remember it would always get played. But yeah, I just kind of got good memories of that tune. I'm not sure what it must be, a sample or something, but I don't know what it is. But the sort of like the start of that, the intro to that song is actually really another really good intro. And I think that was sort of my first dabble into house music, you know what I mean? And I think that just being able, that freedom of like, wow, I've got a car, borrowed my mum's car, crashed it 2 weeks later. But you know what I mean? I've got a car now, I've got the tunes going, the windows are down, it's like that first feeling is great memory. It's a banging tune, man. And I think
Yeah, it's
now, we were
fantastic.
talking about before, it's like, when I was younger, into all that sort of like mad, kind of horrible, harsh music. And as I'm getting older, it's sort of like you, I can see, well, yeah, like Busted, there's something in there. And I think it's something that I may have missed when I was younger, and perhaps when I was making music back then, that actually, a bit like Kurt Cobain, the more influences you can draw on from as many different genres as possible, you know what I mean? And if you can appreciate like a melody, a standalone, or an intro, or the way that a song's been grafted, and you can bring a bit of hip hop into your heavy metal or your heavy rock. We're into something interesting now. Like, what is this? We don't know what this is yet. And like you said, first time you heard Rage Against the Machine, they've pulled on influences from multiple genres there. And I think that was something, that was a trick I might have missed a little bit, back
Yeah,
in the early Bromheads days. So yeah, that was my club tune. Great song.
love it.
Great song. Yeah, very
Love
good.
it. Well, let's head home, and for the next track, I'm going to take you home because I want to know your favorite song from an artist from your home county, please.
Oh no, do you know what? I've completely read this bit wrong.
Have you gone country?
No, no, no. I did get that bit right. But for some reason, I've not read the bit about the song. I thought it was more about the artist.
Yeah,
So
that's fine.
um,
Artist.
the only one that I knew, right, was Craig David. Okay.
Right. So
So,
where's home? Where's home?
but well, basically, a place called Yateley, which is the nearest sort of place you probably heard of, is Farnborough, which is like down the M3 a bit. So it's not far. I mean, I could get a train into Waterloo in 30 minutes from Farnborough Station. So it was sort of like, it was kind of not close enough to London to be London, but then kind of pretty close. So it was sort of like that boring commuter belt bit where there's
Tim, I live in Essex, mate. I started this podcast for that very reason. This is why I started the podcast because
it's like,
my best pal's a former musician called Scroobius Pip, and Pip lives in Essex,
but
and when he blew up, doing music, everyone
yeah.
was like, "Oh, do you live in London?" He's like, "No, no, I just live in Essex," and he's like, "What? Why don't you move to London?" He's like, "Well, quite like where I live," and it was like, but you can't live just outside of London and do anything in the arts. It's like, and so I'm always more fascinated about those kind of commuter belt areas
Yeah,
and
yeah,
what goes on there. That was exactly the reason I was going to start this podcast off a beaten track about location and go from location to location. That was how I initially started it, but then people reached out to come on from
all
all
sorts.
manner of places that were like musical heroes of mine. So I was like, I ain't saying no to that. So like, we'll just do
Let's
this.
change that plan a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. But so we're going for Craig David.
Yeah, so I think I went for Craig David because that was the only one that I knew, and I thought I didn't really do a lot of research around it. I thought I probably should have took the time, but I've been so fucking busy recently. I was like, Oh, Craig David, that would be a laugh.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, like when he came along, man, like he done it. He done it. He
Mm.
was like, he's from Southampton, I think, wasn't he, at the
Mm.
time? And it fit into that exactly like what the last question, really, into that last song, which was sort of like that maturing garage scene. And I think I feel a bit bad for him now because he got all that flack, didn't he, from Craig David and all
Yeah.
that. That was just like, oh, can you imagine? That must have fucking done his head in. But yeah, then after I'd listened to the podcast, I listened to the podcast, to your podcast for a bit. I was like, oh, come on, surely we can do better that. So it's actually Hampshire, yeah. So it's actually technically Hampshire on the border of the M25, is where I grew up. So like, it's like we're like opposite sides, really, aren't we?
Mm.
But I imagine it's a very similar sort of vibe. A lot of my mates in the film industry from Essex as well. So as soon as I started listening to you on the podcast, I was like, oh, bruv, it's like I've known you for years, mate. You know what I mean? And it's that thing, though, isn't it? It's
Yeah, yeah.
you're a similar distance from London, but you're not really London. But it's sort of like now, I don't know. People sort of have a different idea now of London. It's bigger now, isn't it? Does it
Yeah.
stretch outside the M25 now? I don't know. Does it?
I'm not too sure, but I think fundamentally the thing that separates us from them is the fact that the last train home for us is always about midnight. And so
That's
it
it. That's it.
spoils everything. It
Yeah,
means
that's
you
it.
can't go
Exactly
out.
the same. Exactly the same. Yeah, yeah. What are we gonna do now? And then it's like, do we want to fork out for the fucking taxi? No,
Yeah.
it's not that good a night. It's
And
not that
trust
good
me,
a
once you've
night.
done it
Let's
three
go.
times, four times, you ain't getting that first train home the next day because that is not
I think
fun.
I've done that. Yeah, I've done that a couple of
No
times.
one's talking to each other on that station, mate. Everyone's fucked right
You can
off.
see, you can see all the faces. You know what they've been up to. Like, you ain't going to work, are you? You're fucking
No,
going
you're
home. We
not.
know what you've been doing. Yeah, yeah, classic, man. Yeah, my auntie used to live in Leytonstone, which is like E11. So in the summers, I'd go and stay with her because it was like, oh, go to London, go to London. And after a while of sort of living with her there, and I did sort of went to a little acting school and things like that, like Swiss Cottage, and I really got into London in a big way. I was like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. And then after a while, I was like, fucking hell, this is intense. Like
Mm.
everyone's just crammed in and sort of like, so when I went off to uni up to Sheffield, I was like, oh, this is lovely. Like you've got the Peak District, get out on my bike, I'm out in the fields in 10 minutes. So yeah, it was never really going to be the thing for me. I don't think London in the end. But then I did go back and work there for 8 years in the film industry. So
Yeah.
I've done a bit. But yeah, so after sort of the Craig David, I thought maybe I should actually have a look into it. So I've done a bit of Googling, and my favorite one is a guy I've got to look at. He's called Heinz. Wait a minute. I've got to find this now. He's called Heinz Burt, and he was a bass player from the Tornadoes. And the Tornadoes were like a sort of 60s garage. I think it might have been an instrumental. I remember getting into Joe Meek for a bit. Do you ever come
Mm.
across Joe Meek?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, doing all the recording on Holloway Road. I mean, that to me was just like when I first got into that. I've actually got some of the preamps that he used to use for his microphones. I found them on eBay like years ago, and they're like these 1950s, like big knob, like valve kind of preamp things. And I was really into Joe Meek for ages because it was that inspiration of you can make a hit record from your bedroom. And obviously this was like way before any of the technology. Of course, now everything, the hit records are all made pretty much, not all of them, but a lot of them made, people making stuff on the computer and stuff because of technology. But I remember seeing pictures of him like in his place on Holloway Road, and it's just fucking wires and tape machines and shit all over the place. It looks like carnage.
Mm.
But I thought that was amazing that he had managed to just cobble a few things together, get a bunch of mates, and then I'm not sure, I can't remember what the song was called, but I'm pretty.
Telstar.
That's it, Telstar. There you go. That was it. So yeah, Heinz Burt, bass player, Telstar, Hampshire. Much happier with that one. I can't remember exactly where Hampshire he was from. But
Fantastic.
yeah, so I've
They made
cheated.
a film about Joe Meek, didn't they? About 10 or so years ago.
They did, and someone told me about it, and I never got round to seeing it. So I should try and try and
Yeah.
dig that one out. I remember when it come out, it went in the cinemas, didn't I? Think it was in the
Yeah.
indie cinema here in Sheffield.
I
And
can't think. I can't remember who played Joe Meek. I know James Corden plays one of the guys that works in the studio,
oh,
because I think one of the other band's members, one of the other session guys in there was Chaz Hodges from Chaz and Dave. I think he was
really?
one. I think he played bass for. Was it bass or guitar for? Because he played that one of his
Telstar.
productions. I don't think on Telstar, but he
Right.
was one of the in-house session guys because his bass line, da dum da dum, was used for "My Name Is" by Eminem. That's Chaz from Chaz and Dave playing bass on that that
You legend.
sample. oh
How did you find that out? That's fucking weird.
mate,
That is
I love a nerdy fact, mate. Like,
that
I'm
is
all
so
over it.
cool. So that
Mm.
so Dre took that from so what song was that? That was a Chaz and Dave song, or that was a
No, it was something that he'd play. I don't know what the track is, but he'd play session. He was a really prolific session player, Chaz Hodges.
right.
And
And
yeah,
where's Dre? How's he come across
I
that?
don't know. How'd you
Oh
go
my
from
god.
fucking Rabbit to My Name Is by Eminem?
Down,
Like, I
down,
love it.
down, down. Again, that fucking production style, man,
Mm,
like that groove and being able to make those. I mean, that dude, when that came out, like that was just it was a bit like a Rage Against the Machine moment
yeah.
again for me. 'Cause it was like, and then my mate, I remember I was playing basketball, a mate of mine called Imran, and we used to drive over. We were playing for this team in Reading at the time, and he was borrowing his mum's car, and it was a BMW, it was a 5 Series Beamer, and the stereo was mint, like sounded well good. And one day he picked me up in the Beamer, and he's like, listen to this, and he just put that tune on, and I was like, fucking hell. And then he was like, guess what? He's white, and I was like, what? And it was just like this moment. But I love the production on that. Like the
yeah.
fucking kick drum is so hard. Like he's put the kick drum right in your face,
Mm,
and it's like the bass is actually backed off a little bit, and it's all sort of like kick drum led. And then I like the way then on the 2001, like he's snare drum led, and he lets the bass drum sit back a bit, and I
yeah.
love little moments like that, man, where it's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm going to do this a little bit differently this time, but you still know who it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to look into that story. I love it.
Yeah. All right, Tim, it's your last track, mate, and this is where you're the tastemaker. So it's your opportunity to tell the listeners of this podcast about a track you think they may not know, but they will love.
Yeah. So there was a band in Sheffield quite a while ago now. I'm not sure exactly when this came out, but it is on Spotify, so you can find it there. And it is a band called Wet Nuns, and my favorite song is Broken Teeth. And it's a pretty mad story because before I started, well, around the time that we were started the band at uni, and then things were sort of starting to pick up a little bit, and I'd qualified as a teacher, so I was teaching kids when I was 23, which seemed a bit weird at the time because I didn't really feel old enough to be a teacher. And a few of the kids, so eventually I went down to part time, and then the band picked up, and then we got a little record deal, and then eventually I sort of thought I'll give it a year. I'll give it a year in the music industry, and whatever that is, 20 years later or something, like I'm still here doing bits. So yeah, it was pretty cool because a few of the kids found out about the band, and then sometimes I'd do like the old Jack Black School of Rock. So I'd have like a rock club after school because it
Love
was
it.
it was where I sort of like cut my cloth. You know what I mean? When I was younger, I was like all those little school bands and sort of learning to perform to your mates probably first
Yeah.
before anything. So I'd help out a few of these kids, and they're doing covers. They do White Stripes covers, and I was sort of helping them. Oh, how does the drums go? Like, oh, let's try, and all that. Anyway, so one of those bands was a guy called Rob, and in fact, out of that school, with those kids that I was teaching, there was Wet Nuns, and there were two other bands as well. One was called Drench. Drench did quite well actually.
Amazing.
You remember Drench? Yeah.
Mm.
So and then there was another makeup as well, which I've forgotten the name of now. A girl called Mairead. She also started a band, and they were all kids from my class. It's mad. So like, I totally had the fucking worst influence on their life, and they all ended up being fucking skip musicians as well. So yeah, and then when we played Reading Festival, it's so funny because they all came. Sorry, Leeds. When we played Leeds, they all came to Leeds Festival and they had a big fucking banner that said "Go on, Mr. Hampton." So yeah, they're down the front row. That was really
Love
fun.
it.
So yeah, and then yeah, they started between the three of those kids. They started some pretty successful bands. So Rob, who's actually now Leah, she was actually at the last gigs that we did with Bromheads, and at one point, I was crowd surfing, and then she came crowd surfing next to me, and then we started cuddling each other, and then she gave me a kiss, and it was this whole beautiful sort of like trans acceptance moment, you know, like within the middle of the gig and stuff, because we'd probably kissed each other loads over the years. Like, that was just
Yeah.
kind of a punk thing to do, weren't it? Like a bit of controversy and all that, and yeah, I mean, at the time when Leah was Rob, they had a fucking incredible. They had two piece, and they just made this absolute racket. I mean, and you'll hear it on the song. Ross produced it as well, so it's another
Yeah.
little link to the studio. And yeah, just that song for me, still when I put that album on, I'm just like, man, if that record came out now, I think, you know, and they had a bit of money chucked behind it, I think I think they'd be quite a big band. And yeah, so that's my little one in that's chucked in there that you might not have heard of. Had you heard of it? Had you heard of
I
them?
haven't, no. No.
Okay, yeah, that's cool.
Well.
Yeah,
And we
yeah.
make it nice and easy for everyone else to go and have a listen as well, Tim, because we do a little Spotify playlist of all the songs that we've chatted about today. And then playlists always look absolutely batshit because unless you understand, if you stumble across it, you've just got Rage, Nirvana, and then Vanilla Ice, and it's like it makes no sense.
It sounds like me though. That doesn't matter. It sounds exactly like me. I don't make any sense whatsoever.
Well, look, this is your moment where you've got to talk straight up sense because this is where I'm going to ask you about what you're doing because we've been banging on about everybody else's music. What's going on?
Well, yeah. So we had about 18 years of not doing anything really. So yeah, the I was like I said, I was working in the film industry for about 8 years, and then I sort of got back to Sheffield and started reconnecting with my old mates. And the bass player, a guy called Jono, I hadn't seen him for a really long time, so we sort of started hanging out again, and we found time on lunchtime to just start meeting up. And you know, it was really good to just reconnect as mates. Jono had a really bad bike accident that left him with a permanent concussion, which means basically a part of his brain has pretty much died. So he really struggles with sort of balance. He can't really travel anywhere. He hasn't been able to go on holiday with his kids overseas, and you know, he can't do sport. Can't even play basketball with his son. So without sort of, you know, it's kind of like you know, when you've had concussion and you sort of feel a bit nauseous,
Yeah.
and sometimes the lights will set him off and things like that. So my daughter's getting really good at making music, writing her own songs and stuff. So I was talking to him about her, and I said, "Oh, can you still, you know, can you still play bass? Because it'd be great if you wanted to do some stuff on Vesper's music." And he said, "Tim, do you know what? I'd absolutely love that because actually playing and making music is like the only thing that I can still do that's not been affected by my accident." So I sort of, you know, that kind of rung a bell. And then a mate of mine got a venue here, and he'd been begging me for like 2 or 3 years to play a Bromheads Jacket gig there to sort of as a charity gig and stuff. And so I sort of felt like, oh, maybe this could be fun. And my partner, who I've been with for just coming on 5 years, she didn't know anything about the band. So, you know, you tell the stories, don't you? I mean, it's probably the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
to you, but it's not quite the same. You can't really, you show a few videos on YouTube and stuff like that. And I sort of thought, maybe it'd be fun just to do a gig. And so I said that to Jono, and his eyes just lit up, and he was really, really excited about it. And it was sort of like the icing on the cakes. We didn't really talk about the band until sort of like probably a year into hanging out with each other. So yeah, it was just meant to be a bit of fun, really, and just for the kids to be able to see us play as well, because obviously the kids were quite young at the time. Well, I don't think Jono had any kids at the time. I think I had one. So yeah, it was sort of like, yeah, let's do this. And then Liam said, oh, well, you're gonna have to play 2 nights because the venue's not big enough. I said, well, no, whatever. And then he says, yeah, we're gonna charge 20 quid a ticket. I was like, you're fucking joking, are you? For Bromheads. So and then he said, yeah, so they apparently it sold out like 48 hours. So we're like, oh right. So there's a few people do remember who we are. And then from there, it was sort of like, oh, I guess well, we should record some songs. And then we played a little festival over the summer, and now we're booked in to do. So we put another single out. It's just come out, which was great fun. We're working on the album still. We've got most of it finished. We're going to put a new album out, and then yeah, we've got another gig lined up. I think we're oh yeah, and that was the other one I listened to. We've got a gig as well. Oh no, I fucking can't believe I've had a brain fart. But yeah, so we're going to probably release the album at the time we do the Lead Mill show, and then we've got a support slot which I think is in Stockton sometime in April as well. So yeah, so it's all sort of like starting to fire back up again a little bit for us.
Fantastic.
But
How
yeah,
does it
yeah.
feel, sort
No.
of like, you know, maturing a bit and sort of going back to it? Does it feel better second time?
Yeah, man, it really does because I think that Maximo Park. Sorry, you
Yeah.
you had on here. Yeah, listen to that one. It was really good. That's who we're playing with in Stockton.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so yeah, I think second time around, my mental health was really bad, Stu. Where when we were sort of first time around, and I think it was I was drinking a lot. Like when we'd go on tour. I think for various reasons, and I think a lot of it I think was a pressure, of the change in the industry, like so once we'd got that first record out and the deal had ended, it was like you can't really go on tour until you got something else to release. So the drummer in the band at the time was he was sort of like, oh, I'm gonna have to get a fucking job, and it was all like the dream was sort of ending a little
Yeah.
bit. So I felt a lot of pressure. I think to be able to write more material, and also being so close to the Arctic Monkeys and seeing them just like fucking explode. And obviously at the time we didn't know like they're going to be one of the most important bands of our generation. To us it was just Al and the boys. So it was sort of like, oh fucking hell, like obviously not doing good enough here. I need to do something better, or I need to do. And I think a lot of those pressures on top, then alcohol was getting in the way. So then the second album was a real struggle, really. And I made a bit of a joke of it, sort of in one of the lyrics recently said the second album was a mistake because it kind of was. And I think in a way also all of that pressure was there was a bit of a self kind of sacrifice in a way, subliminally. I think I was trying to kill whatever maybe thing that we had got going. And yeah, so to be doing it second time round, where I've had loads of therapy. I recommend it to fucking everybody. Like therapy literally saved my life. And we've had quite a few people over the years, sadly, in Sheffield who, musicians, and it's all too common, the 27 Club and all this, people who have took their own lives or died too young over the years. And I'm just really, really glad that I managed to, to get the help. And I'd recommend it to anyone who's struggling, is just fucking talk to someone, man. It does make a big difference. So yeah, so coming in second time round, it's sort of like, oh, I don't really care if we don't get fucking the Six Music radio radio playlist or whatever the fuck it is that you're supposed to do. You know, it's really nice to be able to sort of leave all those traumas behind, and because there's a lot of pressures on bands, man. And even, you know, I just recently finished a music video, and it fucking, and obviously I've got the business here that sort of like mostly takes care of itself. Like I do have to do bits here and there, like clean the toilets every week, but you know what I mean, it's not like, you know, I don't have a job, so I can step away from my business. And I was fucking knackered, bro. Like I was absolutely grafting to get this fucking video done, and to, you know, get the songs ready and all this and all that and all that. Big fucking respect to anybody that's, you know, that's got to the point where, you know, you're even getting 100 people turning up to a fucking gig, because it is an incredible amount of work. And unfortunately, the industry isn't there for us to help us. They're just there to fucking rip us off. And it's unfortunately like a really horrible, I think, realization as an older musician now, that you know, you start, artists are starting to talk out about it. The girl, I can't remember what she's called now, just got I think she got Grammy for best new pop act or something like that, and I've forgotten her name. Really good, really like her stuff. But you know, she's started to speak out about when she got dropped, and you know, you put the hours together that people are working. You know, okay, you know, the CEO of Spotify is going to say that content's free, but it's like, yeah, but what about the fucking labor, mate? Like, it's like it takes fucking hours and hours and hours, and nobody's getting paid for doing that work. And it's like, I mean, isn't that slavery, isn't it? I mean, like, so yeah,
Spotify ain't sweating that. They don't
terrible,
care.
bro, terrible. So I mean, it's big respect, yeah, to a lot of the guys who are really working so hard. They've got a day job, and they've got to put all this stuff together, and some of these people have got kids as well. So it's not an easy game, but I am definitely enjoying it a lot more second time round. It's sort of like a lot less fucks are given, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I don't want to do a music video for the next single, I'm not gonna fucking do one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If we don't want to, we can't really tour because you know, in a heavy way, because of Jono's condition, and we sort of like the setup that we've got. So we're kind of hoping that the fans can understand that. Maybe they can meet us halfway. We'll do a bit of traveling. If you do a bit of traveling, like a bit of a payoff kind of
Just do a
thing.
tour of like motorway services, just like meet people like in the
Yeah.
middle.
Yeah. Should we meet halfway for an exchange? Yeah. So a bit of that going on, I think, down the road. But the best bit about it is, yeah, is making the tunes and playing the odd gig here and there. You know, we're just glad to be able to still do it. So, and really appreciate people like yourself, you know, like still interested in talking to us. And it's been a really lovely response to come back. So yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, mate. It's really good.
Oh, Tim, it's been an absolute delight, mate. Like these things never go on for more than 50 minutes, and it's hour and 20 in, and like,
Oh,
and it's lovely, and it's like
hopefully
it
it's
could
not
go on for
boring.
enough. Not in the slightest, mate. It's been a very lovely natter, and I think sometimes you have these guests on, and you click, and it's like, and it's easy. You don't have to think, and like, and I feel like that's been one of them. So it's been an absolute joy, mate.
Lovely. Nice one, dude.
And if
Appreciate it.
people want to keep up to speed with Bromheads and everything that's going on in the studio, where's the best place to follow you, mate?
Yeah, we've got a website which you'll find, I think, Bromheads Jacket something, and then we're on Instagram and Facebook as well. So I think they get pretty regular sort of updates, videos coming out. In fact, videos coming out tonight, but this will be delayed, wouldn't it? Because we're not going
Yeah.
out at the time. But yeah, you'll find all sorts of things to look at and listen to on there. So yeah.
Oh, Tim, if it's cool with you, we'll tag you in everything when it comes out. So if people aren't following you already, we make it nice and
Oh,
simple for
appreciate
them.
that. Yeah. That'd be lovely. Thank you, sir.
Top man, top man. I'm going to press stop, but don't go anywhere.
Nice one.